Welcome to everyone. And as Patrice said, none of us wants to really be here, but we are. And so we support each other and share. And thank you for asking me to share my story. So Joe died 5.5 years ago on Saturday, August 24th, 2019. And the quick answer to how I'm doing is I miss him and I still cry after 5.5 years, but I'm at peace. And I believe he is happy. He was a gift. He was one of our second set of twins that was born within 1 year of each other. Here's Joe. Let me see if you can see it. I don't have my camera turned on. Can you see it? Should I raise it up or down? So, um, so the context of Joe's death is God really softened the blow for me, I feel. 8 years before Joe died, God started preparing me for his death, making it much more bearable in this way. I started attending daily mass and started spending time meditating before the Blessed Sacrament after attending mass. And I had always been prayerful, but I just started diving into the heart of the church and experienced a really deep renewal of my faith and a desire to learn more about my Catholic faith. And so I started to really read a lot. And um, I believe that because of that spiritual growth and openness to the grace of God, when he died, I experienced both a gut-wrenching sorrow, as we all do, and a heavenly peace. So a little bit about Tony and myself. We are parents of 7 children. Joe was one of the second set of twins. He worked for the FBI here in the DC metro area. He was in the counterterrorism unit, and he had been married 5 years and didn't have any children, and he was a practicing Catholic. 9 days before he died, his twin brother, Steve, took his first vows with the Marians of the Immaculate Conception up in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Steve was ordained a priest just this past year. So about that day, it was a beautiful Saturday morning, August 24th, 2019. And we were in DC at St. Dominic's Church celebrating my brother Bill's 25th ordination to the priesthood. He's a Dominican. Joe and his wife had been invited, but decided instead to head out to Chantilly, Virginia, on I-66 West to do some errands. On their way there, there was a slowdown, and cars were backed up in front of and behind them. And Joe was killed instantly when a tractor trailer hit their car on the driver's side. Their car went careening over the Jersey wall and exploded into flames. His wife awoke. Miraculously, the car was upright. His wife awoke to a burning car and an unresponsive Joseph. She managed to get out of the car and was medevaced to the burn unit in DC, which was not far from where we were. So we were at this mass, this celebration mass, and it was an ethereal liturgy. My brother was the main celebrant. It's in a beautiful Gothic cathedral church. And much of the mass was chanted, and the Dominicans are good at chanting. I remember being totally at peace. I was just offering up my gratitude for his priestly vocation and the other men who were also there celebrating. And I really was deeply feeling the love of God poured out through the liturgy. We were just so happy to be there celebrating with them. It was so peaceful and joyful. Of course, we all had our cell phones muted because we were at church at Mass. And then even afterwards, during the reception down in the basement, we had them muted. And we just had a really nice, a beautiful time of reuniting with my brother's Dominican family. So little did we know that by the time the Eucharistic prayers were said in the Mass, our son Joe was actually present with us because his soul had left his body behind in a burning car after the horrific 8-car accident, which left that interstate closed for 11 hours that day. So Tony, after the reception, finally checked his phone and listened to a cryptic message from Washington Hospital Center about the accident. And he dragged me outside, and I called and was connected to his wife in the ER. It was just one of those unbelievable conversations that you never forget. I'm at the hospital. There was a terrible, this is his wife saying this to me. I'm at the hospital. There was a terrible accident and Joe didn't make it. Kaboom. It's just like everything stops. It was just the mercy of God that he had surrounded me with those that were there. My siblings who I'm very close to, Steve, our son Mike, and of course Tony. Right there on the sidewalk out of the church, we were able to cry together, to pray, and then to rush over to Washington Hospital Center, which was pretty close. Hoping that Kate might have been wrong or mistaken, and that he was actually still alive and at another hospital. It was such a hard day having to tell our kids on the way there about their brother's death. And I'm sure that probably some of you can identify with what I'm talking about here. At the hospital, we prayed with the friends and family that came, and all of us were in shock. We were overwhelmed. We had been gut punched, and were attempting to understand the inconceivable and the unexpected. By that evening, I noticed that I had a very strong sense that Joe was happy and at peace with the Lord. I had a supernatural sense of him, kind of like live streaming from heaven. And it was with me the next day and continued for a long time, kind of like a light from heaven in a dark place. I really needed that spiritual consolation because the grief was so painful, it actually made me physically ill for months. So beginning the next day, that was a Saturday, beginning the next day, Sunday, we began to experience the love of God through our church, our neighbors, and family. They were holding us up in so many ways, including bringing meals for weeks, a GoFundMe account, and other very beautiful gestures of solidarity with us. So all of a sudden, a part of me is in heaven. I found myself constantly thinking of him and what he might be experiencing and where he was. It changed me and all that I did and how I looked at the world. One particularly hard thing for me and Tony was that we never got to see him like that afternoon or anoint him the day he died. The accident scene was a crime scene because of his death, and they wouldn't have allowed it. He had been so badly burned. they highly recommended that we not open the casket. It was almost 2 weeks before we could get his body from the Virginia medical examiner, and then for his wife to be discharged from the hospital to attend his funeral. So there was little closure, and really no chance to say goodbye until he arrived in the casket for the funeral. It wasn't long after his funeral that I became convinced that Joe was more present in the Blessed Sacrament than in his remains at the cemetery. Um, Tony was really blessed. He was moved to invite our immediate family, our 7 kids and their spouses, together as a family just a few days after he died to share among ourselves where we were that day and what we experienced. It was really very fruitful in helping us understand what they were going through. And later we took advantage of the grief counseling from the FBI. And for his 1 year anniversary, we went on vacation together. While processing our grief over the next few months, we had other children and we worried about them, how they are doing, trying not to cry too much in front of them, trying to pay attention to their lives, which kept marching on. We live about 5 minutes from the Catholic cemetery where he's buried, just up the road. So that turned out to be a great place for Tony and I to cry, to pray together in the days and months that followed. And we still often go there and say our rosary together. Tony and I experienced the loss differently, but thanks be to God, we grew closer as we leaned on each other and remained open to talking and listening. It actually was helpful that COVID happened in 2020 so that Tony could work at home and we had those opportunities to talk. So he died in August. Then in November of 2019, I'm just going to share with you one example of the many times that we experienced the Lord's mercy in those following weeks and months. Just these little snippets, these things that happen, and it's like God is so with us. So let me take a drink and okay, so I'm at Staples and I needed to copy the 26 pages of guest signatures from Joe's funeral. And the woman at the print counter helped me to find the right paper and begin the project. And well, she started the project, she was doing it. She asked me if it was from a wedding. So I told her about his death, and she started getting emotional. So I did too. And she came over and gave me a big hug. We chatted a bit more as she finished the job. And when she said that she couldn't and wouldn't charge me for these copies, I started crying again. Then, out of the blue, a woman who had been doing her own copies to my right was overhearing us. So she comes over to me and says, I have a 28-year-old twin who lost his twin brother. And I just want to tell you that you'll be okay. God is carrying you, and your tears will turn to laughter. My jaw dropped. I gave her a big hug, cried some more, and got details about how her son died at the age of 17. It was just another experience of the kindness of perfect strangers and seeing that I had tried unsuccessfully at two other coffee shops that afternoon. I felt that that was quite the divine appointment. So, Joe worked for the FBI, and the FBI showed up in a big way for us as soon as they learned of his death. They called us every day to see what they could do, helping his wife, and then showing up in big numbers, complete with the big black SUVs at his funeral. There was a colonel and a general among them at the church. They told us going through I guess it was at the wake, they told us that he was a hero and had saved American lives. And we just didn't understand why they valued Joe so much until November, when the FBI held a memorial for him at the National Counterterrorism Center in Tysons. It was quite a big event with hundreds in attendance, and they dedicated the most crucial counterterrorism conference room in the country to him. So this is what we learned. Well, Joe was kind of a low-level analyst, staff operations specialist. But he was gifted and dedicated, and he dug into the mounds of evidence from the USS Cole bombing, and he got lucky, and he nailed some evidence to a suspect that they had in custody. Also, part of his job was to socialize with terrorists at Guantanamo Bay. He got lucky again when that prisoner turned and started to help the United States. All this blew us away because he couldn't share, much less would he brag about his accomplishments at work. We were deeply touched as well by his coworkers' stories of the antics and fun he managed to bring into their lives. It was just a side of our son that we had no clue about. So the journey of grief can take us to places we'd never go otherwise. And I'd like to just talk about, I guess, two of those places. The first one is that I never imagined that I would be finishing a project in memory of a loved one, like I've heard of women doing, like when their husband dies, for example. But it happened, and now I understand that drive and love behind these kind of things. So Joe was a history major in college, and he took an interest in the 200-year-old overgrown family cemetery, which belonged to my father's ancestors up in Frederick County. The year before he died, he proposed and started a 10-point plan to clear the cemetery and fix the fallen stone wall around it. He emailed the family, and they made great progress in clearing it out the year before he died. After he died, we went up to look at the now cleared site with beautiful views of the mountains. And I left it up to his brothers whether or not to continue the project. They said yes. So over the next 3 years, we planned work days and work weeks to rebuild the wall and then clean and reset the headstones. We finished the big project and had a memorial plaque made and hung as well. It was challenging but rewarding, and I feel that Joe would have been quite happy with the results. Another place that grief has brought us is the Grieving Parents Retreat. We went to our first retreat in 2021, and we've been serving on the leadership team every year since. Personally, I think that the day retreat is a much needed opportunity to spend time reflecting on, grieving, and praying about our lost son, Joe. The time spent is very special to me. Doing this with other parents who know what it feels like is a great opportunity to learn from them and to help them find peace through our faith in the Lord and in his love. I can't emphasize enough the importance of doing as much as we can to open our lives to the healing grace of God on a regular basis through the participation in the sacraments and personal prayer. These efforts fortify us against the wiles of the evil one, who never stops looking for ways to bring us down. These are serious losses that we've suffered, and he will use these events every time, if he's allowed, to twist or to block the truth of God's love for us. Really, it's been the Lord who has guided me through this rocky road by strengthening me and drawing me close to himself and to Joe, who is with him. I've identified many times with Our Lady who lost her son and try to remember that she is one of us grieving parents and able to console us too. When I attend Mass, I remember Joe's presence there in Christ, and I take great comfort in that. Lastly, our son didn't know what hit him since he was killed instantly in the accident, but he had suffered much in his 28 years. I'm sure the same is true for all your children. They suffered. Something I learned shortly after we buried Joe concerned suffering. I had had my prayer time and was about to leave the church one morning when this thought popped into my head. They promoted me really quick because of my suffering. Apparently, I suffered well, and that counts a lot. I'll just say it again. They promoted me really quick because of my suffering. Apparently, I suffered well, and that counts a lot. This thought really seemed to come to me from Joe. And boom, it totally turned around my understanding of suffering, which honestly, I've been trying to understand suffering since I was in nursing school, just to get a grasp on what the Catholic understanding of it is. As parents, we try with all our might to spare our kids pain and suffering. Yet, here is my son communicating to me that it was his suffering that helped save him. Joe actually did suffer well. He didn't complain and was able to cheer others up while he himself suffered with all sorts of colitis, bouts of C. diff and shingles as an adult, as well as the deep pain of infertility for 5 years. As a child, Joe suffered with Tourette syndrome, ADHD, speech problems, and a learning disability. That he overcame all this to become a valued FBI employee was huge to us who knew his issues. We won't stop praying for the relief of our kids' suffering, but God can use suffering to save them. And in fact, it may be exactly what they need for salvation in addition to baptism and faith in Christ. We aren't required to pray for sufferings, but maybe this understanding can help us to accept the trials with a little more peace when they show up. So that's the end of my prepared thoughts. There's so many stories, but I will end it there and open it up to discussion or questions.
Thank you very much, Ellen. we really appreciate all that you've shared.